This anime was almost cancelled, this anime was almost never fully released, and this anime had an episode that almost derailed a multi-billion-dollar franchise. There have been countless anime made throughout history, but no anime is safe from issues that could cause it to prematurely end.
What is that?
Budget problems that force anime to become slideshows, extreme deadlines have caused anime to have to change entire studios, a director's mental state almost caused the derailment of one of the most influential anime series, and even if issues like these don't end the production of an anime, the quality of the anime can be greatly affected. The nature of anime production often brings hardship, and not even some of the biggest franchises are safe. Pokémon is one of the most recognizable and successful franchises of all time, and in 1997, Pokémon was starting to pop off. Nintendo Power stated that Pokémon captured the hearts and imaginations of kids in Japan, Time magazine said that quote, Pokémon had taken Japan by storm, and the Washington Post described Pokémon as a cultural earthquake in Japan. From games to trading cards and all types of merchandise, Pokémon dominated the Japanese youth's interest, and this popularity translated to the newly created Pokémon animated series. When the Pokémon anime released, it quickly became one of the most popular anime in Japan and consistently received high ratings, especially having high viewership from young children. However, even with Pokémon's massive success, no one could predict the absolute disaster the anime was going to face. On December 16, 1997, the infamous Electric Soldier Porygon episode was released. When the episode was aired, it featured a scene where Pikachu destroyed some missiles, leading to a rapid sequence of flashing red and blue lights. This scene ended up triggering seizures in hundreds of children, even hospitalizing many of them. Because of this, the media went into a frenzy, having a field day on how dangerous the Pokémon episode was, even coining the phrase Pokémon shock to refer to the incident. However, ironically, when media outlets would talk about the Porygon episode, many would broadcast unaltered footage of the Pokémon shock scene, causing even more people to have seizures. Because of this, with all the various broadcasts of the episodes combined, around 700 children dealt with symptoms such as nausea, dizziness, and seizures. In the aftermath of all this, Pokémon was pulled off the air immediately, and many parents called for the shutdown of the entire series, with even the government becoming involved. Because of all this, Pokémon for 4 months was completely off air, and Nintendo, the company behind the Pokémon games, took a massive PR hit. To this day, the episode was never re-aired, and for some reason, Porygon was effectively banned from ever appearing on the anime, even though he had nothing to do with the seizures. While Pokémon did eventually return to TV broadcasts, strict new guidelines were introduced and any future or previous episodes featuring intense flashing lights had to be severely toned down. Even after all this, Pokémon was able to make a full recovery in terms of its popularity. However, because of how severe the public backlash had been, there was a chance that the Pokémon anime could have been put on hiatus even longer or even cancelled outright. But because of how popular Pokémon had already been prior to its anime airing, Pokémon was able to survive. However, not all anime had the luxuries and resources Pokémon had to deal with issues, and this was the case for Neon Genesis Evangelion.
嫌いなところはどんなところですか?
自分が出てるところ
Evangelion is a show that many people would consider groundbreaking and influential. From series like Nier to Gurren Lagann, Evangelion, whether directly or indirectly, influenced many modern anime, and this was due to how popular the series became.
Neon Genesis Evangelion. Wow.
Initially, Evangelion's popularity was moderate at best. However, as the story progressed and the initial airing of the show concluded, the anime became extremely popular. In terms of toys, model kits, posters, and other related merchandise, Evangelion sold very well and was even one of Japan's best sellers in VHS sales and rentals. A couple years after Evangelion had been released, it was estimated to have even generated billions of yen in merchandise revenue. However, even with all this success, when Evangelion first started, its production was a disaster waiting to happen. Initially, the budget for Evangelion was considered reasonable and comparable to other mecha anime of its time. However, Hideaki Anno, the mastermind behind Evangelion, was known for being an uncompromising perfectionist, and while initially he intended Evangelion to be more of a typical mecha, his vision for the anime started to change. Anno, during the production of Evangelion, fell into a deep depression, and his personal battles with mental health started to become an integral part of Evangelion's narrative. Anno's vision started to become deeper than just robot battles and teenage angst, and he wanted to explore deeper themes such as existentialism, mental health, and trauma. However, this creative shift came with a price. Anno's new vision was much more complex than the original concept for Evangelion, and his creative process often required last-minute changes and revisions. Gainax, the studio for Evangelion, was not a big or well-funded studio and did not have adequate staff for the anime's workload. This put immense stress on everyone involved with the project, as halfway through, production funds started to dry up, costs started to mount, and animation quality suffered, and episodes at one point were literally being made week to week. By the time Evangelion got to its final 2 episodes, Gainax had to use a very abstract and minimalist animation style, and the story followed suit, having a very abstract psychological ending instead of a traditional concrete one. Because of this, the final episodes were met with a ton of backlash, with some fans even sending death threats to Anno. However, even with all this backlash, Evangelion still became incredibly popular and was able to later release a film called The End of Evangelion, which gave fans a much more concrete yet just as confusing ending. However, even with Evangelion ultimately becoming successful, at certain points it was very much a possibility that the series could never finish. And for another beloved anime, Cowboy Bebop, this was also a possibility. Cowboy Bebop is a beloved anime that achieved widespread popularity in Japan and especially in the West. Bebop is known for its genre-blending style, amazing soundtrack, and unforgettable characters. However, in contrast to Cowboy Bebop's success, its initial production was not so smooth. In 1997, Sunrise Studio, through sponsorship with Bandai, began to produce Cowboy Bebop, but things went wrong from the start. Initially, the concept of Bebop was lighthearted with a focus on comedy and space adventures because Bandai wanted a show that would sell toys. However, the director of the show, Shinichiro Watanabe, wanted the show to have darker, more mature themes, and Bandai was not on board. While spaceship chases and adventures might sell toys, Bandai did not think existential crises, trauma, and depression would. Because of the show's shift in tone, Bandai pulled out of the project and the Cowboy Bebop team scrambled for another sponsor, which they found funnily enough with a separate division of Bandai named Bandai Visual. This change allowed Watanabe more creative freedom to shape Cowboy Bebop into the show it became. However, the trouble didn't end there. Censorship boards in Japan weren't too keen on the show's violent themes, making things even more difficult for the production. Several episodes had to be delayed or heavily edited just to make it to air, and out of 26 total episodes, only 12 were released on the TV Tokyo network. Initially, it seemed like the entire Cowboy Bebop series would never air, but later on a satellite network called the WoW Network picked up Cowboy Bebop and aired the remaining episodes. While Bebop was finally able to air its complete series, because of all these issues, the show suffered through low viewership ratings, only gaining a niche following. However, almost 4 years later, when Bebop was brought to the US, it started to get the mass recognition it deserved. In 2001, through the network Adult Swim, the US audience was able to see Cowboy Bebop for the first time, and it garnered much wider acclaim than it did in Japan. From that point, Cowboy Bebop became a gateway anime for many in the US, and the popularity of Bebop even started to increase in Japan as word of mouth got around and Bebop was rebroadcasted to a wider audience. Bebop was finally able to achieve wider recognition. However, while Bebop dealt through numerous issues, it did not have to switch entire studios like Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is at this point one of the most popular anime of all time. From the creation of Season 1, Attack on Titan had immense popularity and was known for both its unique storytelling and insane animation. However, with this great animation also came great difficulties in production. When AOT debuted in 2013, it was first produced by WIT Studio. The WIT production team was constantly battling deadlines with animators, often working extremely long overtime just to keep up. And it got so bad that WIT Studio had to step away after producing the 3rd season of Attack on Titan due to burnout and financial issues. Because of this, MAPPA ended up taking over the final season of AOT, and while MAPPA was also known for its quality animation, there was some concern over this transition. When MAPPA took over the production of AOT, it was already producing other big and intensive anime such as Jujutsu Kaisen, God of High School, and Zombieland Saga. People were concerned that because of this, MAPPA would split its focus between too many projects and the quality that had been in previous seasons of AOT would suffer. Also, on top of this, many AOT viewers had become used to the distinctive art style that WIT had used for earlier seasons and did not want this changed. But unfortunately for them, this ended up happening. While MAPPA's animation style was not necessarily worse than WIT's, it was different and led to immense backlash as some fans would freak out, even going as far as saying that the entire series was ruined. On top of this, the workload to produce AOT was immense for MAPPA, as oftentimes staff would have to work on episodes until the very last minute in order to hit deadlines. The production became so challenging that the final season even had to be split into multiple parts in order for MAPPA to be able to preserve both the quality of the story and the animation. However, even though the issues like the studio change and the stresses of production could have very easily caused big hiatuses or extreme drops in animation quality, MAPPA was able to avoid these issues and make a solid product which continued growing Attack on Titan's already massive popularity. And if MAPPA had failed, it might have been one of the costliest mistakes ever.
Sounds to me like blackmail.
You're damn right it is, because Jet, you are black and you are male.